Just before we get to that part, though, I'm just going to explain a little bit about what the Leaders Award, if you're an engineer, what would you do competition is all about. So some of you might be just coming to this very, very new and very fresh. So I'm just going to explain what we kind of run. So what is the Leaders Award competition? Its main aim is to inspire young people ages 3 to 19, hopefully who are watching today as well, to look at the world around them and design solutions to problems, which is what engineers do on a daily basis. We provide opportunities for you to meet and interview engineering professionals online, just like we're doing today with Karine, to inspire you to think of ideas and start designing some inventions. To help you with this, we have also lots of available resources on our website. So after the interview today, you can make sure to go and register for those, and that they will help you out as well. Our suggestion is that you make this into a weekly challenge. So interviewing engineering professionals online every week and then going looking for different problems in the world that you'd like to solve and designing an invention to that. Just before you all head back to school, you're going to choose your favorite, your best design and take this into your school where they can then send it off to our engineering professionals to read and judge and mark. So I'm sure a lot of you are tired of my voice now. We're going to head over to Karine. So without further ado, I'll now pass over to Karine Bryan, who, as I mentioned before, is not only a chartered electrical engineer, but the founder of Butterfly Books. Now I'm just going to unmute Karine. Hi, Karine.
Hi.
Can you hear me okay, yes?
Yes, I'll just my video.
Perfect. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to stop sharing my screen. And I think then you should come up. That's brilliant. You've just come up onto our screen now. I'll now hand over to you, Karine. Is there anything you would like to do? Start off with any questions first?
No, I'll get started.
Brilliant. Thank you, Karine.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm Kerrine Bryan, and I am an electrical engineer, and I've worked in the energy industry for 15 years now. I'm from Birmingham, which is where I am right now. It's not where I live, but I'll come onto that a bit later. And just a bit about me, in my spare time, I like to dance and spend time with my family. I've got 2 daughters, Sky and Zoe, who might want to say hello quickly. So Zoe is 6 months old. There she is. There you go. And then Sky, do you want to say hello quickly? And Sky here, she's 3 years old. And as well as spending time with my family and dancing, I also write children's books. And one of them is called My Mummy is an Engineer, which is based on my own experiences of becoming an electrical engineer. And I am the co-author of the book with my brother, Jason Bryan. What I'll do before I tell you more about what I do as an engineer is I'll read a bit from the book and then I'll go into a bit of more detail afterwards. So here it is. It's called My Mummy is an Engineer. Co-authors are me and my brother Jason Bryan, and the lovely illustrations are by Marissa Pegwin. So My Mummy is an Engineer. I'll try and get the book in as well if I move back. My mummy is an engineer working hard throughout the year. She always has an early start and wears a dress that looks very smart. My mummy's job sounds like fun, solving puzzles one by one. Engineering uses science and maths to answer questions during tricky tasks. In the morning meeting, mummy makes tough decisions to ensure we have power for our televisions. She sits at her desk in the afternoon, designing space rockets that fly to the moon. My mummy's job sounds like fun, solving puzzles one by one. Engineering is working in teams, creating real things that once were dreams. Sometimes mummy works on site, wearing a vest that's very bright. There are tractors and cranes and machines that grind. Construction teams build what mummy has designed. And the book goes on, but I'll stop there so that I can tell you a bit more about engineering and also how it relates to this book as well. So if I go back to the start of the book where I said my mummy is an engineer working hard throughout the year, you can see in the background there's lots of high-rise buildings. And for all the time that I've worked as an engineer, I've always worked in the city. So I worked in London for about 13 years, and then now currently in New York, in Manhattan, for the past 2 years. And I've always worked in an office, so my job is office-based. Where I work in New York, a lot of the projects that I work on are based in New York State and the surrounding states, but sometimes the work does take me a bit further afield. So I've worked all around the US as well as other countries, such as a recent project that I worked on in the Bahamas, which was quite nice. The next bit of the book I'll just read and then tell you a bit more about me. So it was, my mommy's job sounds like fun, solving puzzles one by one. Engineering uses science and maths to answer questions during tricky tasks. So actually, when I was at school, I really enjoyed maths and science, but I didn't really know what job I wanted to do when I was older. In fact, I didn't even know what engineering was until I was about 17. I attended some courses and programs similar to this with primary engineer and secondary engineer. And after that, I learned all about what the job involved, and I really fell in love with the job. And I've enjoyed my work ever since then. The next bit of the book was talking about, in the morning meeting, Mummy makes tough decisions to ensure we have power for our televisions. Now, I'll tell you a bit more about my job. So I'm an electrical engineer, and my specific job role is power systems engineer. And that involves designing electrical power systems from generation and to distribution. And on the generation side, it's all about how we can produce electrical power for different uses in the most efficient way. And we calculate the amount of power that's required for new construction projects. So that could be a hospital or a new university or a new area of a university or hospital. And I have to work out the amount of power that would be required for that project, where the power would come from, and, for example, the size of the generators that would be required. We look at also how we can save energy, and this is for using all kinds of systems. For example, we might use the waste heat from other processes on the plant to generate electricity, or even implement microgrids to make sure that we implement more renewable power, such as wind or solar, as well as battery storage. So that's the generation side. Now, on the distribution side, it's about designing how the power gets to the end consumer in the most safe and efficient way. And that could be power, that could be an end consumer that's a factory, or, as I said before, a new part of a hospital or a university. And it could be, like the book says, power for a television as well. The next page of the book that I read was, my mommy's job sounds like fun, solving puzzles one by one. Engineering is working in teams, creating real things that once were dreams. Definitely, I do a lot of teamwork. A lot of the projects that I work on are huge and require engineers from different fields. So it's not just electrical, we will have mechanical, structural, civil engineers to make sure that we all come together to make the project happen. And if I go back to, again, when I was younger, I always enjoyed playing with Barbie dolls and also Lego. And maybe I didn't realize it at the time, but playing with these toys built my creativity skills and also problem-solving skills. And that's really important when you're an engineer. You really need these skills. So that's something to think about. There's always, engineering is such, there's so many areas of engineering that there's different skills that you can pick up and use. Now, the last bit of the book that I read was about working on site. As I said before, my job is mainly office-based, and I've always worked in an office. But sometimes I have to go out on site and make sure I wear my PPE, so hard hat and high-vis vest. And that can be for different reasons. So it might be that I need to attend a client meeting on site, or it could be that I need to survey equipment. So if I'm designing something and I need to go and check what's already out on site, then I'll have to go there and do checks just to make sure it all ties up and that the calculations are correct in the end. As well as working on site, my work has taken me all around the world as well. So as I said before, with my current job, it's mainly in New York and the surrounding states. But over the years that I've worked as an engineer, my job has taken me to South Korea, where I worked for 3 months, and also around different parts of Europe, and now, as I said, different parts of the USA. And I've always enjoyed my job as an engineer, because it's every day is different and I learn something new every day. And that's me. I think we can head to the question.
Hi, Karine. Sorry about that. I was just unmuting myself. Thank you very much for that, for your kind of presentation there and reading through your book. It was very, very inspiring and lovely to see. We've just got some questions actually coming through already. So if you haven't, can you type in your questions into the Q&A section? I'll also be looking on Facebook for those typing it into the comment section as well. We've just got one through from Bryan and Kerrine. So she's asked, what is the biggest building you have worked on, and on average, how much electricity did it consume each day?
So the largest project that I've worked on, it's probably when I worked in the oil and gas industry, where I was working on projects that were offshore platforms that extract oil and gas, or also onshore gas plants. And typically the size of the power system there was 25 MVA. And I've always worked on the construction side. So on them previous projects, I haven't really worked on the day-to-day production side, where you see the amount of energy that's being consumed daily. But in terms of the size of the power system itself, it's about 25 MVA, the largest ones that I've worked on.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for answering that one. We'll just wait. I think a few just coming through at the moment, so we'll just wait a little bit for those to come through. I've got a little bit of a question though for you, if that's okay, Karine. I just want, obviously you said you like to do kind of dancing and things away from that. Is there anything else as well that you like to do to kind of de-stress away from engineering at all?
Previously, I did Taekwondo, so I'm first dan black belt in Taekwondo. That's a good de-stress activity. I haven't done it for a while, but I do want to get back into it and maybe get the kids into it as well. And also a bit of yoga as well. And within that, there's a bit of meditation that you do, which is always good to clear the mind and get you, I guess, away from all of the activity that goes on day to day. Yoga, and I also do that with the kids as well.
Do you think this kind of helps you more creatively doing these things away? Do you get more ideas then for your engineering and for your books as well when you're doing these other things to de-stress?
Yeah, definitely it helps, and maybe not during the activity. So I try to use the activity to kind of get away from the everyday pressures that I might have. And after that, then usually when I go back to my work or back to the projects on the book, then my mind will be clearer and more relaxed, so that I can think in a better way.
Brilliant. We just got another question through. So do you use CAD software to help you in your job?
Yes, we use CAD software. My own experience has been more on the design and calculation side rather than the CAD design side. So although I do use CAD, I'll go in there and check parts of the design that have been done by the CAD engineers. I don't use it myself on a day-to-day basis, but definitely it's one of the key pieces of software that we use.
And then we've just got one from Michelle as well. So what is the favourite part of your job? So what is your favourite part of your job?
Favourite part of my job, I think, is... So I said I really enjoy problem solving. So when there's a problem, trying to come up with a solution. sometimes it can be quite difficult, and not as enjoyable. But another thing I like to see is the end product. So you've been working on a project for sometimes years or now a few months, and it's nice just to see the end product and when it's working. And especially the projects that I work on now as well are renewable power projects, some of them. So it's nice to see how we can, save energy and see that these things are being put into place.
Brilliant. So we've just got one through from Dwayne now. So are a registered professional engineer in New York? Well, I think it means, are you a registered professional engineer in New York? And if so, how did you achieve the status?
So I'm not yet I don't have a PE license, so professional engineer license for New York specifically. I do have one in the US, which is for Idaho. And the way I achieved that one was actually kind of a transfer from my chartered engineer status in the UK. So now I am working towards the PE license in New York, which is a lot of hard work. It will require me to do 2 exams, which I'll need to study for because it's been a while since I've done the basics of electrical circuits. So I'm working on that, but I do have a PE license from the US. Yeah.
Just coming back to your books, Karine, where did kind of the idea come from to create Butterfly Books? Have you always wanted to write books?
As a child, I didn't ever think that I'd be writing books, and in fact, English was one of my weaker subjects. But it just goes to show that you shouldn't let that stop you when you're studying something and you don't think you're that good at it, because you never know. It was all because I was going into schools. So when I became an engineer, I really enjoyed it. And I realized that because I didn't know what engineering was until I was 17, I could have actually missed out on it. So I really enjoy it. And I wanted other people, children, to learn about what engineering was and understand that it was a job that they could do, just so that they didn't miss out on a rewarding career. And that's how I decided to start writing the books, as kind of a resource to take with me into schools to explain what engineering was about.
Yeah, I think that's really important. Like you said, you didn't really know what engineering was until you were you said up to 17, which I think with your books now, that introduces them a lot younger to what engineering is, and I think that's really important. It's kind of what we're trying to do with the Leaders Award, is kind of make sure in primary schools that engineering is at the top of the list, and that they know what engineering is as well. How many books do you have out now at the moment?
Now we have 7. My mommy is a scientist, plumber, farmer, and a recent one was My Daddy is a Nurse, which I guess is quite fitting given what's happening in the world right now. And we always work with people in industry. So like with engineering, it's key in the book that I make sure that the right message comes across and it's technically correct. Then for all the other books where I don't have the experience in them fields of work, I make sure that we work with professionals in the field. So with My Mummy is a Firefighter, we collaborated with the London Fire Brigade. With My Mummy is a Soldier, we collaborated with the British Army. So it's important that we always have the correct input into the books.
Did you say, are you currently working at home with the current situation of COVID-19 at the moment?
Yeah, so I was on maternity leave. So I have a 6-month-old. So I was on maternity leave and I went back to work last week. So I work in New York, but I'm currently stuck at my parents' house in Birmingham, where I grew up, because we were here on holiday when the lockdown happened. So I am working from home.
Yes, I think everyone at the moment is in the same boat, aren't they? All working from home. What qualifications did you need to become an engineer?
There's different routes into engineering. I guess you can go the apprenticeship route. I did the university route and did a degree in electrical and electronic engineering with German, in fact. So I spent a year in Germany studying engineering at the university in Germany. And then after that, I've done a few other courses specifically for the work that I do. So, for example, with power systems, I've been on a few courses where I learn about the details of power system studies. But in fact, at school, my A-levels were not engineering related at all, because I didn't know what I would do with maths or science. So I studied economics, German, and German economics, and I've even forgotten. I did maths, but with statistics. But as I said, I realized that I wanted to do engineering, and I just changed the route. So I went to do a year in industry at an engineering firm to make sure that I enjoyed what I was doing. And whilst I was doing that, I could have gone the apprenticeship route as well. So yeah, that's my background.
You've got a question, another question from Bryan here. So what projects are you working on at the moment?
Yeah, as I said, I just went back. Before I left, one of the projects that I really enjoyed was a study, an energy saving study for a whole country, where we were looking at how a country could implement solar power and battery storage to make sure that all of their energy was, I think it was 20% renewable by 2020. That was quite interesting, because you also look at the financial side as well, which is something I hadn't done before. So as I said, that is great when I'm learning something new. When I've just gone back now, I've got a few projects that are based in New York City. So a hospital project where there's a lot of projects in New York at the moment, because there was disruption after Hurricane Sandy, and they've had to relocate equipment from basements of buildings to other areas. So the one I'm working on the moment is relocation of equipment, and then also an emergency power system. So it's really important, for example, in hospitals, that they have emergency power in case the main power is lost. And they have to adhere to the codes and standards. In the US, it's the NEC code that they work to, and the project I'm working on is making sure that that emergency power system meets the NEC code, which it didn't. So we're trying to relocate circuits and implement new systems to make sure that it complies with the codes and standards.
So we've got another question here. So what did you go through when you were learning engineering? They've also said, sorry if you didn't hear this, but if I didn't hear this, but what kind of engineering do you do? I think you've already touched on that.
Yeah, so electrical engineering is what I do. And at university, I guess the first few years it's kind of common. So you go back and learn the things maybe that were covered at A-level, physics, maths, and that kind of thing. As the course gets further on, then you do more practical work, which I really enjoyed. So we had things like robot race competitions, where everyone had to get into teams over the year, design a robot, and at the end the robots had to race each other and carry an egg without dropping it. So things like that, where it's quite fun, but you're also learning along the way of how you do the coding for the robots, how you build the robot itself, and the teamwork, which is really important.
What was your robot like, Karine? There you go. Can you remember?
I remember that it didn't win the race, but we had the press there, the local press, and ours was shown in the local newspaper. So I mean, that must have been good, even though it didn't win the race.
Brilliant. Didn't look like a TV robot or film robot, did it at all?
No, not massive. Probably about this big. I mean, it had to carry an egg, and we had maybe a couple of terms to work on it. So
yeah. We've got one here from Michelle. So do you enjoy writing and being an engineer?
I enjoy writing, yeah. And as I said before, I never thought that I would say that, because at school I didn't enjoy English that much, but now I really enjoy everything that I'm learning about writing. We have an editor that we work with who's brilliant and has taught me so much about, I guess, the English language and how to use it, and I guess the tone that you use, especially when you're aiming at certain audiences. So I really enjoy that, and it's quite different to my daily work as an engineer. It's nice to have that range. Yeah.
I've got a question here. So, what if you weren't an engineer or a writer at the moment? What other job would you have done, or what would you want to do when you were younger? What job did you want to do?
Um, I I probably I know when I was very young, I wanted to own a sweet shop because I love sweets, like I'm sure a lot of kids do. Um, uh, I've always enjoyed dance, so maybe a dancer if I'd have carried on doing that. But I mean, I still dance now, um, so probably a dancer would have been nice.
Yes, because like you said, you didn't get into engineering until you were about 17. So I'm sure you had kind of, I think children all have lots of different ideas of what they want to be kind of when they're older, and it's not till a
Yeah,
bit later
yeah.
that you do that kind of follow your career. Just to for the young kind of budding engineers who are listening, is there any advice you would like to give them at all?
I think just speak to as many grown-ups as you can about the different jobs that they do, because it's important to know what all the opportunities are out there for you when you're older, because it does take time to decide what you want to do. So I think it's encouraged a lot more now, but try and speak to your parents about what they do, because a lot of children don't know really what their own parents do. We tend not to talk about it much. And maybe ask teachers as well if they can get people into the school to talk about different kinds of jobs, just to make sure you're aware of all the different options.
We've got another question here. So, is there another part of engineering you'd like to explore in the future?
Um, that's a tricky question. Possibly, I genuinely enjoy my work. Um, in the future, I think maybe just with engineering, you learn every day, and even like I'm not a master of my work. You're always learning, so I think it's just to continue to learn my field of work, um, keep on top of the changes in the world that are happening, and I guess as things change with technology and the way the world's changing, it's always important to keep up with the times. So it might be that my field of engineering might need to change and I might need to learn something new in the future to keep up with the changing needs of the world.
Just coming back to your books now. Just get was mummy My Mummy is an Engineer. Was that your first book that you wrote, Karine?
My mum is an engineer was the first book that we wrote, and as I said, that was because I wanted something that I could use to go into schools as a resource to explain what engineering was.
How did you feel when that was first published?
I was a little bit nervous because I didn't know how it would be accepted, um, but it was well received, and I had positive feedback from it. So that was great to know that all the hard work that we'd put in had paid off, and hopefully it will pay off in the future as we spread the word about what engineering is specifically for this book, and address the misconceptions that there are in the field as well.
Yes, I think it's a really good book and all your other books as well to introduce, like we said before, all the children to lots of different careers, and I think it's really good for the gender imbalance. Although that is kind of shifting, I think the gender imbalance of women in engineering. Um, but I think it's minimised a little bit now, which is really good, and it's kind of balanced out now as well. We've got another question from Bryan here. So, what is the most common renewable energy source you use?
Um, Mainly solar. A lot of the projects are solar, although the recent project I worked on was wind, and I think that's increasing. Um, the wind power tends to be more common in Europe. So in the US now, they're kind of scaling up in that area of work. So I think that will be a big area where I'll start to do more work.
We've got another question here from Michelle. I think this is about the books as well. So, have you ever been on a red carpet?
A red carpet,
Yes.
like a, like an award.
I think so, yes.
No, not yet. That would be nice, but we'll see. Maybe as more people read the books, one day it might happen. I don't know.
Yes, yes. Obviously, we're doing the Leaders Award competition, Karine, which is all about the children thinking of a problem that they can see or they know about, and then trying to fix that problem. It can be anything from getting out of bed in the morning, or it could be a worldwide problem. We've had lots of different ideas for them to come up with. Do you think the Leaders Award competition, does it develop the skills, do you think, to need to be an engineer?
Yeah, definitely. What you're explaining there about the competition is exactly what we do every day. So even though there's a study side of things, the key thing I think with engineering is the problem solving, because every day it's about solving a problem, to making a solution to a problem that exists in the world. For example, with my own work that I was doing, the problem is that an emergency power system doesn't meet the codes and standards. How do you fix it to make that happen? And there'll be obstacles along the way. For example, you can't install a generator in the building because there's no space, so you might have to make a new area of the building. So it's all about problem solving. So definitely, and as I said, as the world changes, there'll be more problems that happen and more solutions that we have to come up with through engineering.
Brilliant. And then what they have to do is they then draw their designs onto kind of an A3 piece. But would you say this is key with engineering, that you design your ideas?
Yeah. There's someone asked the question about CADs earlier on, and the only way that we can go from engineering to building to the construction team building the thing in the end is that there has to be drawings of the idea or the solution. So that is a key thing, and also not even going from engineering to the construction stage, but between the teams. So making sure that things tie in together. So if I'm working with a civil or structural engineer, making sure that my electrical design or the cables can work well into the structure that they're designing as well, that the weights are okay and that kind of thing. So it all interacts, and the way to share the information and improve it is to make sure it's down on paper or electronically, so that we can solve the problem.
Just going back to your books now, have you got any more kind of books in the pipeline at all that you can share?
Yes, we have a couple which might be around train driving or lorry driving, and maybe I'm being a bit early on this one, but possibly about football. But we'll see.
Would that be kind of women in football and female football players? Fantastic. Yeah. We've also we also got a Network Rail graduate engineer on this afternoon, so that's quite fitting that you'll be doing it about trains and a book about train driver as well, which is really nice as well. I'm going to kind of put you on the spot here a little bit, Karine, but I can give you a bit of time if you need it. So with the Leaders Award competition, we ask, if you're an engineer, what would you do? What would you create? Is there an idea that you can think of at all, an invention that you would like to make up at all?
There is actually, and I've been talking to some of the engineers that I work with who work in lighting design. Given that I had a baby and hardly get any sleep, I attended a presentation a few months back, which was talking about how the light that you're in your environment affects the way you sleep and how awake you are and your mood. And I thought it would be great to have some kind of lighting that would help my baby to sleep longer. So that would be an invention that I'd like to happen.
Fantastic. I think that's really good, because you've seen that problem, or you've experienced that problem, haven't you? And then you've gone to then thought how you would then solve that problem as well, which is what the young engineers need to think about when they're doing that. I think it's quite hard for them sometimes to think about some themes around their invention. Is there any themes that you can think of at all that might be good for engineers, kind of like renewable energy?
Yeah, sustainability is an important area. The environment, making sure that something's good for the environment, as with the renewable energy. And then I'm trying to think of any other. I think that those are the key ones in the world that we live in today, is just the impact on the environment and how you can help save energy rather than consume a lot of it.
I think we're going to get a lot of entries around COVID-19, I think, as well, and lots of
Yeah,
inventions around that as well.
yeah.
We'll just wait for a few more questions. If you have got some questions, could you please type them in to the Q&A section, or you can type them into the chat section as well, and I will relay them to Karine through there, and we'll just wait a little bit for them to come through as well. I think you mentioned before, Karine, about there are apprenticeship schemes going on at your work as well. Do you think this is a viable path as well, rather than, I know some people want to go to uni as well?
Yeah, and I've worked with people, a lot of people who've done the other route, apprenticeship route, and it depends on you as a person, I guess. I mean, I haven't done an apprenticeship, so I can't explain the details on it, but I imagine that you get a bit more hands-on experience from the beginning, and I did get hands-on experience with my year in industry, which I think was really key in my learning process afterwards as well. Having that hands-on experience.
Yes, and I think that'll help some parents listening as well with uni fees if you don't want to go down that route as well. I think it's quite nice that there are those apprenticeship schemes, especially in engineering as well.
Yeah,
which is fantastic. I think you've kind of touched on it already about your favourite part of your job. Is there any part that you think could be improved about engineering at all?
As the books that I do are all about addressing gender bias and making sure that there's diversity in the different fields. The key area I think that needs to change in engineering is making sure we have, representation of the population that we serve. So if we're designing something for for a hospital or for a university, we need to make sure that the people designing it are aware of the end users. And the only way to do that is to make sure that the designers are representative of the users. So if the end users are 50% female, then it would be great that the design team are 50% female as well, so that they can understand what the needs are of the end users. Yeah.
We've got a question. Where did the name Butterfly Books come from, Karine?
I've always been a fan of butterflies. I had butterfly theme for my wedding, but it also symbolizes transformation. And the aim of Butterfly Books is to transform the way that children perceive various careers. So it's all about transformation.
Was the idea for Butterfly Books just to start off with my mum is an engineer, and then did it kind of sprout from there, all the other ideas for all the other books as well?
Yeah, definitely. I got together with my brother, and then Marissa is actually a friend who I used to dance with. So it was kind of just a project between us first. And then usually what happens, I've noticed as I publish a book, there'll be someone else that sees it and says, oh, it would be great to have that in our industry as well. So that's how it did sprout from the initial one being well received and then seen by other people in other fields of work.
Yeah, I think it's kind of sprouted off in all different directions for all different I think it's a really good idea because it can relate to any career, which is fantastic as well. Do you kind of favour one over the other? So do you enjoy writing your books more now than doing chartered electrical engineering, or is it a balance there?
I'd say it's a balance. And with both areas, with the engineering and with the books as well, there can be some tricky days as well where you think, oh, this is, do I carry on doing this? But it's always when you see the end result that you think, no, I'm going to continue. But there is definitely a balance between the two, and I like that balance as well.
When did it first come out, your first book, Karine?
And the first one was published in 2015. And we started working on it actually a year before that, doing the research behind it to make sure everything was true to life as well.
I bet it's gone very quick over the last few years, hasn't it?
Yeah.
What I'm going to ask you a bit more of a personal question. So, what is your kind of favorite book that you've ever read?
Favorite book that I've ever read? I like The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Night, and I tend to read a lot of children's books now for bedtime stories. So Sandra Boynton books, and classics as well, so the Gruffalo, that kind of thing. But yeah, I need to read a bit more, I think, as I get more time. We'll see how things go.
Yes, I bet you get a lot of practice of reading children's books at the moment, aren't you?
Yeah.
So I bet reading that one today to us, I bet you didn't feel too dissimilar to what you do at the moment at home.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
There's actually, I'd like to mention there's some other books that I've read. So I don't know, Roma Agrawal has a book called Built, which is what I was reading when I was pregnant, actually. It's all about structural engineering and her experience of being a structural engineer. So that's actually one that's worth reading, because I learned a lot about that as well from that book as well, and some interesting facts about structures in New York where I live. So that was great.
We've got a good question here. So you mentioned about New York as well. Is there anywhere in the world where you would like to work?
I said I worked on a project that was based in the Bahamas that involved a couple of trips there. Maybe the Caribbean would be nice. I mean, my heritage is Jamaican, so it would be nice to maybe spend some time there and do some work there. But I mean, it's the thought of working in the heat. I know there's air conditioning, but I think it might make me want to just be relaxing on the beach. But maybe Jamaica. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that would be kind of a holiday as well, wouldn't it? Although you're working, it'd be nice to do the work on the beach, like you said there. Whereabouts in New York is it that you work at the moment, Karine?
So I'm in Manhattan, just above Penn Station. So right in the city.
I bet with your kind of dancing background and everything, you get to see kind of a lot of shows. Do you get to go to a lot of shows there in New York?
I try to go. So in fact, I've had more visitors in New York than when I lived here in London and Birmingham. So usually when I get visitors, we try and go and see a show, which is really nice and makes me think that it could have been a career option for me as well, being on a show. Yeah.
I bet that's maybe it could be a path way for your books as well, converting to shows in later life as well.
Yeah, that would be good.
Yes. Fantastic. We'll just see if there's any more questions that'll come through. We might have one or two more, and then after that we'll kind of wind things down if that's okay, Karine.
Yeah.
As well. I know you mentioned all the different places that you like to go for work, and you work in New York. Is it nice to be back in the UK from time to time though as well?
Yeah, it's great. All my family are here, so it's nice to see all my family. That's the main thing that I do miss, is being away, because I have a huge family and we're very close. What was the rest of your question? Was that?
Yeah, no, that was it. Yeah. So do you enjoy coming back from time to time in the UK?
Yeah. And interestingly, this even though what's happening is in the world with COVID-19 is quite bad, it's given me the opportunity to spend time at home with my mum and my stepdad, so that's good.
So we'll have one final question. So do you now find it easier to write books than you did when you first wrote your first book?
I think I found the first book the easiest, just because I'm an engineer. And it gets tricky, because the books all rhyme, so you're limited with the language when you're trying to make a rhyme, and then you're trying to also make sure that all the facts are in there and you don't use incorrect wording that could I guess be seen as negative or a misconception. So it gets quite tricky writing the books, but it's a back and forth, and some are easier than others. And what's key is that we immerse ourselves in that area of work to understand what it's about. And the illustrator as well, she does a lot of research. She'll go out to, for example, with my daddy as a nurse, she went to visit hospitals to make sure that we had all the right things drawn in the books as well.
Fantastic. Thank you for answering all those questions there today, Karine, and also reading out your book, My Mum is an Engineer, as well, and sharing all your kind of background and everything around engineering and writing your books as well. So I just want to say a big thank you to you. I also want to say a big thank you to everyone sending in their questions today. They have been amazing, and I hope, Karine, you've enjoyed answering them as well.
Yeah, it's been great.
Yeah, so I want to say thank you for taking time out of your day to do this as well. Also, and thank you for sharing your daughters as well at the start of the interview as well. I hope you've all been inspired by Karine today to take on the Leaders Award competition that we're running, and now you can start designing. She's given us lots of ideas there as well. So use our resources on our website on www.leadersaward.com to help you, and please join us for our upcoming interviews as well. Later today, we've also got one with Chris Applin, as mentioned before, from Network Rail at 1:30. I've also put a link to our survey in the chat section and on Facebook in the comment section. If you could please complete that, so also we can then relay this to Karine about any feedback as well about the interview as well. Thank you for everyone joining us today. I think we'll end it there. Thank you very much, Karine.
Okay, thank you.
Bye, everyone.